10 lines from the bottom of Chaf Beis Amud Sheni. And the Gemara is discussing Ben Shana B'Molchai. The Gemara is discussing Shaul HaMelech. Now, we learned yesterday that Shaul HaMelech was the reason why we brought in Shaul HaMelech, because he's the source that we learned that you're not allowed to count people.
Yeah.
He was counting the Jewish people. He made them use a sheep or a piece of shard, but he didn't want to count any people. And in the end, Shaul HaMelech blew the kingdom because he made one big avera, and that's it. And he got lost. And here, David HaMelech, the Gemara we lended off yesterday, that David HaMelech did two major averas. He had a relationship with a married woman and had a child with it. And then another thing of counting the Jewish people without using anything, and he gets to keep the kingdom. So the Gemara discussed that. But now Ben Shana L'Molchai, that's the pasuk. It says a pasuk that Shaul HaMelech was 1 year old when he became king. That can't be possible. Amar Rav Huna explained he was Keben Shana. He was like a young child. Shaloi Tom Tam Chay. That means although he was an adult when he became king, but he had the nature of a baby that never sinned. That's how of a tzaddik he was.
Yeah.
Maskef lo Rav Nachman Yitzchak says the Ema maybe just the opposite. Keben Shana Shemeluch L'Petit. Maybe the Uvetzaya. Maybe he was like the Tanakh compares him like a baby, a 1 year old baby that is full of schmutz and has a dirty diaper. That means that Shaul HaMelech was full of hate. So the Gemara says, Achviu leil Rav Nachman siyuta b'chelmei. They showed Rav Nachman a very, very scary dream. And for saying such a brazen statement that Shaul was not such a tzaddik. So Omar, when he woke, he said, Nanesi lechem, I spoke against you more than appropriate. Atzmoi Shaul ben Kush, the bones of Shaul, the son of Kish. In other words, he tried to ask forgiveness. But then that wasn't enough. He saw another scary dream that made him frightened. So then he said more appropriately, Omar, I spoke too much brazen against you. Atzmai Shaul ben Kish melech Yisrael, the bones of Shaul, the son of Kish, who is the king of the Jewish people. And I guess then he didn't see any more scary dreams. What you see is that when you read the Tanakh, we have no idea. I mean, you look at the Shaul, he looks like a jealous person. But the Psukim are darshan that he was a very great person. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda Mishmuel, why didn't it last too long? Why didn't he make it? So you think because he did the Averis. The answer is not that way. Because he never had any scandal in his family. He had a perfect family. And so therefore, the kings that come out from his lineage will always point that we have never had any scandal. But David HaMelech had a scandal in his family because David's grandmother was a Gioris from Rus, who was not even supposed to be Jewish. It cannot be. It's still not clear. It wasn't clear at that time that she wasn't even accepted to be a Jew. He said, you can't put somebody to be like a king over the tzibor. You can't make him shul president. Unless he has a basket full of insects hanging on his back. In other words, when it means that he has a scandal. He has something not perfect about him. Why? Let's say he becomes haughty. Everybody can answer. Tell him, turn around and look at the basket of insects behind you. In other words, look where you're coming from, then don't be so haughty. So, but when somebody's too perfect, then that's not a good. That's not good to have that. It's not good to be the king of the Jewish people because, again, that's the reason why Shaul HaMelech lost his kingdom. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, he said, why did he get punished? That they took away because he let Agag, the king of Amalek, survive. They took away his kingdom. Why? Because he was such a tzaddik, Shaul HaMelech, that he forgave on his honor. That he was too soft with people, and a melech has to have stolz. He has to have some gumption. How do we know? Shnema, when Shaul HaMelech was anointed king, nobody believed it. They said, the pasuk says, "B'nei Belial Omru." People in the pubs used to say, "Maya she'enu zeh." How's this guy going to help us? Vayivzi uhu. They degraded this guy Shaul. They didn't bring him any gifts, and then he kamachrish, and Shaul HaMelech was silent. He's silent. He didn't say anything. Shmuel anointed him, and then of course he had detractors, and he was silent about it. There was a story about Nochash from Ammon who went war against the Jewish people, and Shaul HaMelech led his people into battle and won the war. And then everybody said, "Oh, he's the right person to be the king." And his supporters wanted to take revenge against these Bnei Belial who were saying degrading things about Shaul HaMelech. And Shaul HaMelech said to them, don't kill them, I'm moichel them, and that's it. But a king is not allowed to be moichel on his kavod. He's not allowed to forgive on his honor. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, similar idea. Not only is a king not allowed to be moichel on his honor, the Rabbi Yochanan said a similar idea. Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Reb Shimon ben Yochai, Kol Talmud Chacham, any Talmud Chacham. We go to Daf Chaf Gimel Amud Al. Any Talmud Chacham, he doesn't take revenge, doesn't hold a grudge. Kenochash, like a snake, ain't a Talmud Chacham. In other words, he has to, when someone does something wrong, he has to take nekama. He has to take revenge or hold a grudge. So the Gemara asks, what does that mean? That a Talmud Chacham should hold a grudge and take revenge? Well, there's in the Chumash says, Lo sikam, we're not allowed to take revenge. Lo sitar, you're not allowed to hold a grudge. So the Gemara says, that's concerning b'momen who did say. If someone harms you on your personal wealth and money, then you shouldn't take revenge against that person. But not when someone insults you. When someone insults you and says something very degrading to you, a Talmud Chacham, that is a personal insult, and for that he's permitted to take revenge and hold a grudge, and he's obligated to do so. The time we learned in the Brisa, the Brisa gives you an example. What is it called revenge, and what is called holding a grudge? What is an example of holding a revenge? What's called holding a grudge? Nikima is if they tell you Hashiuni, if someone tells you, Reuben says to Shimon, Hashiluni maglach, lend me your sickle. Amaloi, so Shimon says, Lav, I'm not lending it to you. Lamacha Amaloi, who then the next day Shimon goes to Reuven, Heshilin Kardemucha, and lend me your shovel. Amaloi, so Reuven says, Eini mashil derech shloihish alpani. I'm not lending it to you the same way you didn't lend me the sickle when I asked you the other day. Zuni kima, that's called revenge. You're purposely not lending somebody because he didn't lend you. What's called holding a grudge. Amalei, if Reuven says to Shimon, Hashiluni kardumcha, lend me your shovel. Amalei, so Shimon says, Loi, I can't do it. Lamacha Amalei, the next day Shimon says to Reuven, Hashiluni chalukcha, lend me your shirt. Amalei, so Reuven says, Heilach, you can have it. I'm not like you, Shlohi Shaltani, that you didn't lend me. I'm lending you. That's called holding a grudge. That's called holding a grudge because you're keeping this in your heart and you're mentioning it. You're not forgetting about it. So holding something in your heart and not forgetting about it, that's called holding a grudge. So what the Gemara just got through saying that there's no isser of holding a grudge when someone insults you. So the Gemara said, if someone insults you, there's no isser to take revenge and hold a grudge. But Tanya, we learned in the Brisa that there are certain people, Hane'elovim, people who are insulted, the Einim Ovim, and they don't insult back. Shaimin Cherposim, they hear shame, the Einim Ashivim, they don't answer back. Those type of people, are also oisim mehava. They do those type of people that do mitzvahs out of love of Hashem, not to do reward, but they really connected to God. Usmeichim biyisurim, and they are happy when they have problems. In other words, they have no kindness against Hashem. They have no complaints against God. People could insult them; they're not the one going to answer back. And then people shame them; they're silent about it. They let things pass. What's special about those people? Alei and the pasuk says about such type of people. But I have of those that are lovers of Hashem. It says Hashemish bigurase. They're as powerful as the sun in its power. That means that they're going to light up in the future world like the light of the sun in its power. So from this brisa that praises somebody that does not hold a grudge, does not take a revenge if someone insults him. So how could that be that you're telling me a Talmud Chacham should do the opposite and hold a grudge and could take revenge if someone insults them? After the Gemara La'olam, really you're not supposed to take a revenge. The Nakat Lebelibe, you're allowed to hold it in your heart. The Nakat Lebelibe, you hold it in your heart. It means that it's not appropriate for a Talmud Chacham to take revenge. He should be quiet and not answer back. And what is it we say that he has to hold something he has to take revenge like a snake? That means he should always remember it, and he should keep it in his heart for the honor of the Torah. And if someone will take revenge on his behalf, he should be quiet and not stop people from speaking up on his behalf. In other words, the Talmud Chacham, if someone wants to stand up for the covet of the Talmud Chacham and say, how could you have said such a thing to this person, he's a Talmud Chacham, the Talmud Chacham himself should be quiet and let that person do it. Because at the end of the day, when someone insults the Talmud Chacham, he's not just insulting the Talmud Chacham personally, he's insulting the Torah of the Talmud Chacham. He says that this person is a waste, and he's not, he's wasting his life away, and whatever they can say about somebody who spends his time in toiling in Torah. So that's an insult, not just for the person, but it's also for Torah. The Gemara says, Rava says, if a person lets things slide, okay, he's not medactic with people. He's not pinpointing when people do something against him. Mavir loy al kol pshoif, then they forgive him on every sin, even if he did big, great sins, and he should be punished. But if a person is mavir al midosav, when people do something to him, he lets things slide. In Shemayim, they let things slide by him too. So we see it's a good thing to let things slide. So the Gemara answers again, the mafaisilei mafais. If the guy who insulted the Talmud Chacham would ask mechila, forgiveness, then it's appropriate for the Talmud Chacham to forgive right away, not to hold something in his heart. But Rav Shimon ben Yotzadik says that you have to take revenge if the guy doesn't ask mechila. If he doesn't ask mechila, then you should hold a grudge in your heart. And if someone wants to take revenge on your behalf, the Talmud Chacham should allow that to happen because it's a covet a Torah. New Gemara. What would they stick out when they did the fingers? They had everybody gather in a circle, if you remember, and everybody stuck out a finger, and the head Kohen would throw out a number and count the people, and randomly end up by that person. That's how you won the lottery. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah says that people could take out one finger or two fingers. Now, you don't take out the thumb. You stick out either any two fingers. Now, the Gemara now understands that if a person sticks out one finger, you count him as one person. And if you stick out two fingers, you count it as two different people. So the Gemara asks, now that the Mishnah says that a Kohen could stick out two fingers and he's counted as two, so of course, if he sticks out one, he should be counted as one. What is the Mishnah telling you? The Mishnah is not telling you that. Amar Rav Chizda is just the opposite. Boy kasha, that's not difficult. What we learned that you stick out one finger is bori, a Kohen that is healthy. On him, he is required to stick out one finger. When the Mishnah says you're permitted to stick out two fingers, is bechoila, a sick person, a guy who, let's say, broke his fingers, that once he sticks out one finger, another finger pops up. And therefore, they permitted him to stick out two fingers, but he's only counted as one person. So really, they only gave each person was counted as one. You can't stick out two and be counted as two people. But if a person was sick and he had trouble with his fingers, the Mishnah says we allow the Eved, that person, to stick out two fingers, but make sure nobody is allowed to stick out a thumb and another finger, because that leads to trickery. Because again, as we explained, when a person will see that the number is going to land on the guy next to him, he's going to stick out a thumb and he's going to stick out his pinky or whatever, or even his index finger, but they look like they're far from each other. And that could lead that he'll be counted twice, so that the goyrol, the lottery, ends up at him. So it leads to chicanery. So therefore, you're not supposed to stick out a thumb. Tanya, like we learned in the Brisa, achas mitzim, stick out one. Shtayim mitzim, you don't stick out two. But when did we say this? When did we say this? If someone is healthy, if someone is sick, he's allowed to stick out two people. By Yechidim, a guy who's sick and sitting off to the side, as an example, he could stick out two fingers, but the ain moinin lehen alachas, but he's only counted as one person. So the Gemara says that what does that mean? The Gemara asks the question: the ain moinin law, you don't count the sick person that sticks out two fingers, ela achas, only one of the fingers. But Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, ain matzian loy shlish, you don't stick out your middle finger. The loy goydol, you don't stick out the thumb. But because of the people who are trying to trick the person running the lottery, because if the guy who's seeing that the lottery is not going to end up correctly, he's going to stick out his thumb to be counted as two. If you stick out your middle finger, minor, then we count it, because we see that this kind is not trying to trick. He's by accident sticking out his middle finger with his forefinger. But it's clear that it's one person. Goidel, if you stick out your thumb, ein moinen loy, you're not counted at all. And look what the Gemara says over here. V'loy oid, not only that, the guy sticks out his thumb and he was trying to pull a fast one on the person running the lottery. Shaloika min hamamuna bepakia. You get whipped from the head kayen with a special type of whip that had a lot of strings attached to it. But it didn't come to one point. It came to many different points. So first of all, we see that if someone sticks out two fingers, he's counted as one. So the Gemara says, my moinaloi, what does it mean that you count the person who sticks out two fingers? Name, it means achas. You count them only as one. And the Gemara now explains what my pekia. What does it mean a person got whipped with a pekia? Amarav marda. He gets whipped with this thing called a marda. My marda, Amarav Papa, Papa said, mitarka de taya. It's a strap of the Arabs that's used to whip horses. The psik ratio that the top has, it's like is sliced in different parts so that the horse should feel it more severe. So therefore, the pekia is like a type of strap that's a very severe strap. So what the Gemara just said over here, that if one kohen dare stick out his thumb, trying to trick the person, the kohen that's running the mamuna, that's running the lottery, if he tried to do that, they whipped him. So you see, in the Beis Hamikdash, they whipped kohanim to stay if they violated the internal rules. Amar Abaya said, Mareish Hada Amida. I used to think the Hodetanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Ben Bibai Mamuna al Hapakia. And Ben Bibai was in charge of the Pakia. I didn't know what this word Pakia is. Amina Psil Losa. He was in charge of making wicks. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, they used to take old Kahanim clothing and make wicks. They would make wicks for the lamps of Simchas Beis She'eva. So when I heard that this guy, Ben Voy, was in charge of the Pakia, I thought he was in charge of wicks. But now I knew the word Pakia means the whip. Now that he heard what it says in the Brisa that you get malchus from the guy in charge with this pakia, I say, my pakia, what does it mean, pakia? Nagda. It means a whip that you hit the kahana with. And this Ben Biboy was the head whipper in the Beis Hamikdash. Kahana got out of line. They whipped him, finished. Like the old country. Okay,
Yeah.
we are holding right now by the wide line at the bottom, just right before the wide line on Chav Gimel on Aleph. Okay. We saw the story in the Mishnah that one guy pushed the other guy off the ramp and broke his leg because he wanted to win the race. Now here it's a very perverted story and it's very hard to understand. But listen to this story. Tanu Rabbanim. The real story that happens like this. There were two kahanim. They both were very much equal. In other words, they both were just as athletic as each other. They ran, they ran up the ramp to win the race. One of them reached the 4 amas, the finish line before his friend. And he won the race. He got the job of Trumas Hadesh. So Notal, the guy that lost, took out, I don't know, Sakin. He had a knife that he ran with it. And he had a feeling he was going to lose because I don't know why he had a knife with him. But and what it means, he stabbed the other guy, the winner, in the heart and killed him. So this happened in the Beis Hamikdash over running to do a service. Amar Rabbi Tzadok al Malas Ulam. So Rabbi Tzadok, who was the great rabbi at that time, got up somewhere in the Beis Hamikdash and he wanted to get everybody to cry. You see, what the Gemara is trying to say is when one Jew kills another Jew, it's everybody's problem. It's not just an isolated incident. You walk home and say it has nothing to do with me. He said it had to do with everybody. It's almost like people walking away now what happened in Meron and saying that's there. It has nothing to do with me. No, something like this affects everybody in Klal Yisrael. And that's what he's trying to say over here. He says everybody is guilty. Achenu Beis Yisrael Shimu. Rab Tzadok said, my brothers, listen. Harehu oimet yimatzi chalal ba'adama v'yotzu zukinecha b'sheftecha. We know the story of Egla Rufa. If you find a dead body, then there's a Canaan of the city have to bring a kapara to say that they're not guilty for having this guy killed next to their city. They don't know who the killer was. Anu, in our case, Almi lahavi Egla Rufa. Who should bring the Egla Rufa? Al Ha'ir, is it on the city of Jerusalem, or Al Azaris, or the people the Kahanim that are in the Beis Hamikdash? Who's responsible? The Jerusalem people or the Kahanim for not, giving enough Muslim? How could this be that one Jew kills another Jew? Go call on Bechia. So everybody started to cry. In other words, he got everybody to take responsibility, and that's what a tragedy like that is something that affects everybody. Now listen to this, and gets even stranger. Bo Aviv Shaltina, the father of the guy of the Kohen that got killed, it calls it he's the father of the baby because when a child gets killed, it's your baby. So he said, the Kohen that got stabbed was not really, he was dying but not dead yet. He found his son. He was twisting in agony on the floor in the dirt, but he didn't die yet. Amma, he said, Harehu kaparaschem. His death will bring about your forgiveness, because death brings forgiveness for people. And then he said, Adayim b'ni mefarfim. My son is not yet dead, so therefore, like nitmo sakin, the knife is not tame, because my son is not a dead person, and therefore the knife that's stuck in his body is not tame. So save yourself, pull the knife out of his body and take and get it away from here, so you won't get the knife tame. Well, so this is like a strange thing. He was more concerned about the knife becoming tame from the dead body than about his son dying. It comes to teach you what the attitude of the people during the Second Temple. It was much more stricter to them, keeping kalim, vessels, tahar, pure, more than the killing. In other words, he's more worried about the knife than his son dying over there. And that's very strange. The very strange. I don't get it, but I don't know. Maybe he was in shock. The Chain who Oimer, the Chain who Oimer, and the pasuk says, "V'gam not dam naki shafach menashe ad asher milei Yerushalayim pelepeh." There was a time that blood was flowing in the time of Menashe during the first temple. That blood was so much flowing in Jerusalem that the blood was filling Jerusalem from one end to the other end, the pelepeh from one gate to another gate. So this is not a murder in New York, but not even to compare. When murder was rampant, and that's the way it was in the Second Temple. It's fascinating that what they're showing now on the internet, all the Jewish websites, is that all going around interviewing the fathers and the brothers and the sons and the wives of the 45 people that got killed. And I think it's unfair to interview somebody just that's getting over the shock. It's crazy, and you find that they say strange things, and then that gets posted on the internet and sent around. So anyway, the Gemara wants to know, hey, Maisa Kodim, which story came first? Did the story of the breaking of the lead come first, or did the story of the killing? Do you say that the killing came first? That was the first story that happened. So then they should have set the Hashta Shvikas Daman like Takina Paisa. If like the killing, they didn't establish the lottery on Nishbra Rag like Takinu, then they waited to the next story that somebody broke his leg, and then they established, no, we're doing a lottery. Hello, it must be the Nishbra Rag Kodim. The story about the broken leg came first. The cave in the Takin. So then if that came first, and the Mishnah says they established a lottery, Kavan the Takina Payosa, since they established a lottery, Arba Amas Mayavidite. And how did the story with the 4 Amas, how did that end up happening? How did the story of the murder happen if they already had the lottery in place after the first story of the guy breaking his leg? So the Gemara gives you the chronological order. La'olam b'shvichas damim kamen. First story was that somebody got killed. And but everybody thought that this guy was nuts. The murder is a one isolated event. It can't happen again. But even even in a regular situation, they're coming to a danger because they saw through these races somebody broke a leg by being thrown off. Then then they established the lottery. The Gemara now just wants to review what was the hesped, what was the speech of Rabbi Tzadok. Amar Rabbi Tzadok al malus ulam v'amar achid beis shimu hari oimad kimatzi chalo ba'adama anan amin mitul lahavi al ir Elazar. So Rabbi Tzadok said that really we should bring a egla rufa for this murder. So the Gemara asks, Yishalayim bas asuye egla rufihi. In Yerushalayim, is it possible to bring an egla rufa? That concept doesn't apply by Jerusalem. It applies by other cities in Eretz Yisrael, but not by Jerusalem, because Jerusalem really is a public place. It didn't belong to Eddie Shavit, because the Gemara says, by Tanya, it says in the Brisa, Asar Devar Nemer Yerushalayim. 10 things were said about Jerusalem. V'zuhu achasmen, and this is one of them. Now we go to Chof Gimel Amid Sheni. What is one of them? That she'einam via egla rufa. There's no concept of egla rufa in Jerusalem. So how is Rabbi Tzadok saying that Jerusalem should bring an egla rufa in this case? An egla rufa you bring when you don't know who the murderer is. In our case, we know who the murderer is. So the answer is Elo Kedei Laharbes Kuchia. He just mentioned the egla rufa to bring out crying, but that his speech didn't make too much sense. But it invoked people to cry. Now the Gemara says, the Gemara wants to examine that part of the story, that the father of the murdered victim came when found his son in agony. His death will forgive you. And then he said, my son is alive. And take out the knife. So the Gemara wanted to know, what is Ibailo? Let me ask you a question. How is it possible that the Taharas Kalim was more stricter than murder? Does that mean that the avon, the avera of shlichus dam and hudazal, the killing became cheapened? It became cheapened. Avo taharas kalim kidakaima. But the idea of keeping kalim pure, that always remained the same. Or maybe the opposite happened. Shvichas damen kidakaima. The killing of people was as it always was. It was still a serious crime. Aval taharas kalim who the chamira. The tahara keeping kalim pure, that became such a chumrah that people got obsessed with that. What was the real story over there? Hashma mitikanosov le Talmude, from the posik that they bring down, that comparing the story to the time in Tanakh where it says Dam Noki Shafach Menashe, during the time of Menashe, blood was flowing like water. Shmamina, from here you can deduce that the real story was that the attitude of people was Shvichas Daman Hudazal. The killing people was a cheapened event. And that's what happened in the attitude at the time. But Taharas Kalim and keeping Kalim pure was not like the way it always was. It didn't become like an obsession of people. It's just that murder became cheapened. You have to know what kind of question, what this aboya was of the Gemara, and what's the nafkamina. Anyway, one more small piece of Gemara, and then we'll stop. We know that you do Truma Sadeshin, right? Truma Sadeshin means the coin goes up there, takes a little piece of ashes, and drops it off to the side. Fine. But then once the Pasuk says that once in a while, the coin should change his clothing, put on new clothing, put on other clothing, and then take out all the ashes that was in the middle of the Mizbeach and dump them outside the Beis Hamikdash. You know, I mean, there must be tons of ashes there. That was another job. Tana Rabbanan. So the Gemara is now elaborating on that second job. It says that the kohen should now take off his clothing, put on other clothing, and remove all the ashes that are on the mizbeach when it really piled up. It doesn't happen every day, but let's say once a month they did that. Shemeni, I hear kederech Yom Kippurim. I would have thought that just like a Yom Kippur, the kohen gadol changes from the gold, the shmoyne begadim, the gold clothing, to the white clothing and back to the gold clothing. It means he's going from one type of clothing to the other type of clothing. So I would have thought that this job of removing all the ashes that are on the mizbeach is just a garbage dump. You don't need to wear kahuna clothing. That the kohen will take off his holy garments and put on a weekday his dungarees, and then take out the ashes on the mizbeach. I would have thought it's not really an avodah. Talmud loymar. So the pasuk says that the kohen takes off his clothing and puts on other clothing. So we compare makish begodim shloivesh begodim shepoishet. We compare the clothing that he takes off to the clothing that he puts on. Just like the clothing that he's taking off are holy clothing. Avkam big kodesh. So it's holy clothing that he's wearing. In other words, he doesn't put on a pair of jeans and then removes all the ashes that are in the mizbeach. He actually had to wear holy clothing. Is big kodesh. He had to read kohanim garments. So what does it mean? What does it mean that he has to put on other clothing? What is the Chumash trying to tell you? The Chumash is trying to tell you should put on old kohen clothing, of lower quality. That's what it's trying to say. In other words, that the Torah is giving you good advice. Since this is a dirty job, taking out all the ashes that are on the mizbeach, don't put on your fancy brand new kohen clothing. Put on an old kohen clothing, so that if you're going to make it dirty, you're making the old kohen clothing dirty, but not your new, your brand new kohen clothing. So they must have the kohen maybe had more than one set that fitted. That is the opinion of the Tanna Kama. Rabbi Lezer says, that means that we learn from this that he learns that really you could wear a pair of dungarees. You don't have to. It's not really such an avodah to take out the ashes. And what does it mean? It teaches you that a kohen who is a balmum, right, a handicapped kohen, he can do that job. Limin al kahanim bali mumim sheheim kashem loitzias adeshim. A kohen that is handicapped, is kosher to remove the ashes. Like we see, handicapped kahanim had special jobs. I think they were checking the worms in the wood. So a handicapped kohen, since it's not an avoida, it's removal of the ashes. So then that's what the Chumash is trying to tell you. So we can, okay, you know what? This is a good place to stop. Omar. I know it's a little high, but we can stop over here because the whole it's a sugya.
It's fun. It's amazing. But if Rab Tzadok wasn't cited by name, I would think that all of this was just like an allegory, just to show us the mindset at the time of Bayis Sheni about what is Shviach Damim and how people valued the Kalim. But this was probably an actual event because it was cited by Rab Tzadok, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this is a real thing. And when I think that murder was rampant and cheapened, you could say that today because people who are watching a lot of movies and video games and all the horrible things that you can fill your mind with.
Yeah.
Even if you're not murdering, but the idea of somebody dying is not moving you.
Right.
That's what we see in our time.
Yeah, it's almost like
we're desensitized to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word.
It means nothing anymore.
That's exactly that's the word. Desensitized. Yep.
And I saw it right away. I hate to say it. I don't want to speak bad, but right away when this event happened, some fancy guy pulled out a Zohar from somewhere and said, "Oh, it says somewhere in the Zohar that 45 people are going to die on the yard site of." First of all, it was a misinterpretation, and second of all, what did you show with that? It just showed that we're going to make light of the whole thing.
Yeah.
All the idiots always come out with comments after these things happen.
Right, and it ends up on the Jewish website. So it's just
right because anybody can write anything. Yeah.
But I find it fascinating that Al Gemara talks about something that dying at a holy place. A killing happening at a holy place.
Yeah, it is amazing. Okay.
All right, you should hear good news.
Thank you, Baruch.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Enjoy your
All right. Bye-bye.